Chops podcast back in the studio. It is April 21st today, and if you are in Elkhart, Indiana, you are gearing up for ISMA this week, and it's getting real. But in the meantime, we have in the studio today special guest, Mr. Scott Preheim, the BPAC Bikeman Performing Arts Center Technical Director. Please give it up for Scott. Woo! We'll cue in more audience. Welcome to Chops podcast, Scott.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here.
So glad you are here. We at Concord High School are very, very fortunate to have Mr. Preheim here. And I usually tell the kids that this is not normal that we have somebody like you at our school. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. There's probably a few more schools that have somebody as a technical director, but maybe not necessarily full time. Certainly when I started here, there were a lot less schools that had someone. You see a few more, but we are extremely fortunate to have a full-time technical director position.
It is great that you are here, and I wish the kids understood what it's like to not have the full-time, or to have somebody who is like not probably like if they had like a quarter of the experience you did and a quarter of the skill set that you did, because our kids are so fortunate that like everything just kind of happens for them, and they're not always sure why or how, but they just show up and everything's ready to go. Yeah. So this is great. So can you give us just like a glimpse of your like day-to-day and kind of what that is? Because if I'm listening like technical director, I have some ideas of what that could be, but I'm not sure.
Sure. Well, my day-to-day job is just to do whatever's necessary to prepare the Performing Arts Center for whatever event's happening. As you said at the beginning, ISMA is happening now. So right now it's fairly unglamorous. We spend most of the day moving chairs and stands and risers and acoustic shell and so forth to facilitate rehearsals for the different performing groups, which is a benefit of having a technical director, because we can rehearse choirs in the morning on the stage and then switch over to band and orchestra for the afternoon when those classes are there, and then the next day we'll switch it back to choir. So that would be an example of something if we're preparing for a more technical show like our Christmas Spectacular or Carnival. We would have a lot of actual technical work of preparing the consoles for cues, connecting lighting and sound gear to those consoles and so forth. So then we get into a lot more technical stuff besides the just general setup and so forth.
Yes. And that's in addition to that, you've got your administrative stuff that you need to take care of. And, Scott has a really nice office. He kind of like hand built a lot of the stuff and like set it up. And you painted it too. You painted
yeah,
the
we
walls,
did
right?
paint it. Yes.
It's looking fresh. So if he's not on stage or if he's not in his office, those are kind of the places you are in the shop.
Generally, one of those two is where I'll be during the day.
And a lot of music teachers listening to this podcast probably think that they're the ones that are first to arrive and last to leave. And that could be true for you, but at our school, it's usually this guy, first to arrive, last to leave, and with the most amount of performances, because you have to do all of them.
Yeah,
pretty if it's
much.
on the stage, you're there. Whereas, if it's an orchestra gig, I may not be there. If it's a band gig, our choir director might not be there. But anytime that the stage is in use, also if it's a academic banquet or an athletics banquet, just like you're there.
Yes.
So if there's a contest on who can be at the high school the most, Scott's probably in the lead.
Certainly right up there.
Yeah, definitely up there. So that's a little glimpse of like what you do. But, can we talk a little bit about like where you came from and kind of how that got started, and give us the intro to Scott Preheim?
Well, I'm actually a 1986 graduate of Concord High School, and so when I was in high school, I was part of the marching band, part of the band program here, played in the band, jazz band, and then I just kind of on a whim signed up to be part of the student tech club that we have here, and that's where I got my interest in working in theater. I don't know why, I just decided that seemed like that'd be fun, and so I started doing that. So as a freshman in high school, I started on the tech crew, doing very freshman and high school kind of things on the tech crew, and really grew to enjoy it as I got older and had more maturity, was able to do more things, and was generally running the lighting console for shows when I was a senior. And then in college, went on to kind of just do that as a side hustle. I actually was not a theater major. I was actually, in my day, industrial arts major, so shop, engineering, whatever they're calling it today. But I worked in the theater on the side. That was my campus job, and it paid, basically is how I earned my spending money while I was in college, and was able to gain a whole lot of knowledge for free, basically, just from working in there and being instructed on this is how we'd like to do things. And so a lot of that early knowledge came from that time working there. And so just like I said, kind of as a side hustle, I went on to graduate school after college, and then I had a job for 2 years teaching high school in Illinois. So I had about 4 years where I was disconnected from theater and just didn't get into it at all, and I definitely realized I was missing it. Then the position here came open, and I applied for it, and I was like, I don't really know. I don't really have any college background in this, but they decided to hire me on my experience, and it's just been fantastic ever since.
And what year did you come on?
I started in July of 1995, so it's coming up to 30 years here this July.
Well, congratulations. That's
well,
awesome.
Thank you.
And something too that I think we forget about is that you have an education background.
Yes.
You taught, and now you work with kids more often than probably people would think, because you have your own, you continue the tech club.
Correct,
but
yes.
on top of that, anytime that there's a group of kids that works in the stage or rehearses in the stage, you're kind of helping them out with, mic technique or, stage technique.
Yeah, stage
blocking.
present. Yeah, sometimes I'll collaborate with theater directors sometimes on blocking and things like that. But yeah, really, I'm very thankful that I had that education background. I'm able to work with the students as part of the tech crew, and I love the fact that we do our student involvement with the Performing Arts Center as a club after school, because it's all volunteer. And so if the students don't want to be there, they don't come. So we everybody who's there wants to be there. I don't have to convince them that they need to be there. And I can relate to the students in a little different way. I'm not their teacher, so I don't have to grade them, test them, count them tardy. And so I value the fact that I can relate to the students in a little different way than the regular teacher.
And the kids do love it. I mean, they talk about it, and they're like waiting at the door ready to go. And it's fun to like watch some of those kids kind of grow, even from my perspective. Like, they start out doing, as you kind of said, like the freshman level stuff. And then there are some kids that, like, if you have to leave, they can run the show.
Yes.
They're on the headsets, and they're adjusting the lights and the sound and calling the shots. And it's fun to watch them do that. Because that's like I would say a high pressure situation if you're running a show.
Right. Well, I kind of like to tell the kids that, for music, once again, music directors watching this, that if you're running a lighting or sound console for a live event, you're basically playing a solo the entire show.
That's a good
because there's nowhere to hide. If you don't hit the button or do the right thing at the right time, the sound isn't going to come on, the lights aren't going to come on, and everybody's going to know that wasn't. You can't hide back in the ensemble when you're in those two positions, because it's you and it's you.
It's you and it's you. Oh, yes. So on this podcast, like, the things we like to talk about are best practices in your teaching, your content, and your kids. And one of the things that Scott and I had talked about beforehand, like one of his best practices as a technical director, is that he's got plan A all the way through like plan Z. And Scott has some really good stories about where he kind of had to go past B, C, D and find some ways out. But I'm just curious, like, there are probably some teachers listening that, ISMA's coming up, and ISMA is our state contest where we play for judges and get a rating on our music, that they've got their backup plans, right? Like, they're bringing extra music. They're bringing their tub of accessories like mutes, mouthpieces, valve oil, whatever. And they're hoping they don't need it, but they have it there. And that's like, one level compared to what you do, where stuff can go wrong in any moment, and it can be so wrong you can't even fathom how it got to that point, right? So I'm curious, like, how did you come up with that system for yourself to have all of these backups in place and kind of get used to creating that every time?
Well, I think part of it is, what we do, and what you do too as music educators. Ultimately, it's a live performance, and so there's really no do-overs. Yeah. It's whatever it is what it is, and so we really, really try to have very robust systems in place to not have failures. And they're just like anything else. There are occasionally going to be times when, if it happens at the wrong time, there's not much we're going to be able to do about it. But for the most part, like if we're going to take equipment someplace, having some idea in mind of, okay, if this piece of equipment doesn't work, how can I work around that? Or I take extra cables for things. I take extra, if we're going to use a wireless mic for something, I'll have some wired mics along so that if the wireless mic doesn't work, we'll just switch to wired. Just maybe probably some of my best stories are relating to marching band sound, where we take the sound equipment out with the marching band, and we have very little time to set up, very little time to prepare. It's not very much, certainly not the industry standard. It would be likening to you taking your band out and you're going to play your concert and there's no warm-up or tuning. That's basically what happens at marching band with the sound equipment. I mean, yes. We do not have time to go through the protocols that we would like to before the show starts. So when you do that, then you really have to have some strategies of how is this going to work. And certainly a lot of times stuff is very high stakes. And so if this isn't going to work, then what are you going to do? And sometimes even rehearsing what's going to happen in the case of it not working correctly. We have done that several times, and as you said, I do have some stories. They make for a good story. At the time, it really wasn't a very good story, sure. but we have covered ourselves several times in pretty high pressure situations, particularly in marching band, by having some set plans of this is what we're going to do in the event that this happens.
So I will come back to that, but like, how were you always like that? Did you just kind of have that in you?
I think a little bit. I always try to be prepared for whatever I'm doing, okay. And so if I can, think about, okay, if I take some extra things with me that will account for things I wasn't planning on, or problems. That's a little bit just my personality, but. I think, being around live event production, the bigger the event, the higher the stakes. Yeah. And so, depending on, concert touring and so forth, sometimes they'll have literally extra consoles in the truck just in case the console, decides to quit working right before the show starts or something like that. They will have extra gear on the tour because they really, they're going from town to town and they don't really have any place to just say, okay, we're just going to go grab another one. So that's a little bit part of that, but I think it's kind of a blend of my personality and just the weight of you're in charge of this live event and you want it to go well.
It's really fun to watch Scott during like a marching band, either like a show or even a rehearsal. You've got your crew of the dad volunteers that help you out, and occasionally some students that not involved in marching band, but just come in and support. And you've kind of made a home for yourself under the tower. He comes out, he's got his nice little tent, which is like keeping the equipment safe, whether from sun or rain or director storing batteries off the tower when they die.
That has happened.
Has it really? You've gotten pelted?
I've had a battery hit the deck right beside me.
I can't believe they do that sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't watch. And then he'll take his folding lawn chair and he'll go back like, about 50 yards behind the tower to get a read on the sound. He's got his iPad with him. And you're kind of vibing, and it's fun to watch. But then, on the flip side of that, it's like we get in these high stress situations and you guys are pulling gear and you're covering it with tarps because it's just like downpouring out of nowhere. And of course there's all the, sound stuff that has to take place. But there are some contests that we've been to where, other schools have sound failures, and you're watching that and you're cringing for like your brothers, right? You're like, oh, that stinks. But usually you can see like why, or come to that conclusion. And on the rare moments that we've had sound issues, they're usually student triggered.
I would say that's generally true.
They're
yes.
usually student triggered. So we're very fortunate that like Scott's success rate is like so strong. You know, if he's a surgeon, you're coming out of that room alive, right? I mean, I would.
Well, I appreciate that.
You actually,
I mean,
you'd be a very good surgeon in another life. There, you would have a high life ratio. That's good. So, you know, one of the shows I think we're both thinking about in terms of marching band is the 2021, the Jimi Hendrix Handel House show.
Yes.
Where we had a student playing a guitar live. That was the end product was pretty cool.
Yes, indeed.
And if you're in the audience, you're just watching, you're like, how'd they do that? And if you're us that know everything, you're like, it's a long story.
It is a long story.
There's a lot going on. So I can think of that like that show and its predecessor we can talk about too, which was the a guitar show in 2003. Is that correct?
Correct. 2003.
Different show concepts, but both based around an electric guitar. And if you're thinking electric guitar, marching band, how does that work? Well, Scott Preheim can tell you. So can you kind of talk about what that looked like, but also how that affected you and how that affected how you coached the guitar player in terms of backup plans and just like what you have to be aware of?
Sure. Well, I'll start with 2003 because that was the first in the line of experiences. And that when we do a show like that, that's where you really start feeling the pressure because, I mean, that 2003 show was named Guitarist Espanol. So if the guitar doesn't work, we don't have a show. And so it was the centerpiece of every movement of that show. And so very, very critical. And then to kind of compound everything with that, the decision was made for the design of the show that the entire pit was moved out to the center of the field to actually blend with a tarp that we had on the field. So, so all the gear and all the students are out on the field with the ISMA rules. Adults can't be on the field, so I can't be out there with the gear. It's all out in the middle of the field, and if something goes wrong during the show, there's nothing that can be done about it. So, so that kind of puts you in this box of, oh my gosh. And so we had one of the guitars. We had a actually electric guitar and electric bass, and we wanted them to be on wireless, and so that's how we had it set up. ISMA also has very strict rules on you can't run your wireless gear during warm-ups, and the idea being is that they don't want you to affect somebody else's performance because there might be interference between the equipment.
Which we've heard before.
Which we have heard before.
It's pretty awkward.
It is very awkward. And so once again, not best practice for pro audio that you can't test your gear before the second you need it.
Yeah.
That is not typically how we do things. So, but knowing that that's how we had to do it, we were prepared to do that. So we, for that particular show, at warm-up, we actually connected the guitar directly and wired so that we could hear it in warm-up. And so we went out to set on the field and get everything checked, and we could not get the guitar to make a sound on wireless.
And this is at state finals?
The state finals.
In the RCA Dome.
RCA Dome. We're standing out there, and it's not happening. I had a second mic pack for that. That's not happening. So now I'm definitely down to plan C of, okay, we're going to direct wire this. And in the process of going through all of this, I remembered one time at rehearsal, we had a situation where that we were routing the guitar through a guitar pedal, effects pedal. You'd appreciate that as a guitar player. And one time at rehearsal, the effects pedal, despite the fact the screen was on showing the correct settings, it just didn't pass audio. And so all we had to do is just like when your computer doesn't work, you unplug it, plug it back in, restart, and it made sound. And so so that was an example of we were on to plan C already, and we still weren't getting sound. And fortunately, in the back of my mind, I remembered that time at rehearsal when it didn't work. And so that was really what saved that show, was simply restarting the guitar pedal.
I have heard this story so many times, and it's still so like real. Like I'm feeling the butterflies of nervous. But so I was at that show. I think I was 8 years old for this. But I had family in the band, so I went. And I was a Concord band geek as a kid. I know you find that shocking, but I appreciate the lore of it,
Yeah.
And in the video, if you ever watch the video, it's dead silent. And you're back there. You can see it. You're probably 4 pixels big and, 03, but you're back there and it's just dead silent. And then out of nowhere, you hear a burp.
One note.
Some string came out and everyone just loses their mind cheering. And that was that's probably the moment that you took the biggest sigh of relief.
I did, but I knew that we were short on time. And I was a little concerned. I mean, I realized without the guitar, the show was over.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to stay out here to do everything I can. But I also had in the back of my mind that, okay, we have to start or we get a penalty. And so I went off the field not really knowing where we were with all of that. Very, very fortunately, we played 10th that year for the show. So we did not have long to wait. I've often said if we would have had, if we would have played first or second, I probably would have had to go to the infirmary and lay down because it was pretty rough sitting off to the side waiting to see what happened and how that all came out. So,
oh my gosh, and the placing that the band got that year?
Placing was first. Yes.
State champions, 03. The banner is in the band room right there.
Yes.
Oh, man. And the rumors that came after that were awesome. That this is not true, but they took the guitar player and they put him in a private room in the RCA Dome with the judges and said, you need to play your part, because they thought it was like a canned recording because they couldn't find him.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I try. Yeah, I remember that rumor when I was a kid, and I'm like, how silly that is, but at the same time,
because he wasn't on wireless, because at this point we were just happy that we had sound, so he was direct wired to the console, so he had to stay within 10 feet of the console, so he wasn't where he was supposed to be. The only guitar the video could find was the bass guitar, and so here's the guitar wailing away, and here's the bass player just playing their bass line, and it's not lining up. And so there were definitely some people that were crying foul that somehow we were doing something that we shouldn't be. But it was definitely an interesting time, but what a wonderful result for the school and all the students. So
yes. So, and now let's jump forward in time to 21.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of looking at this like you have, you were really good at your job then. You're very good at your job now. But there were 18 years in between that you kind of picked up some things and maybe things you learned and did differently. But first of all, the tech is far improved in 18 years. And, your console for the marching band is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So things that we had to do differently with the guitarist then, and maybe stuff that you kind of kept in mind. I think we used the same guitar pedal.
We did. We ended up using the same guitar pedal even after that.
Just give it one more round.
Yeah. One more round to give us a problem. But
so things you did differently or maybe thought differently about.
Well, one of the things, there's two main things. First of all, the equipment was on the sideline again.
Yes.
So that was more helpful. Also, in that 2003 show was a time when ISMA had made a decision that they did not want adults to be involved in the production. So I could not run the console for the show. Right. So I wouldn't have been able to anyway because we had it out on the field and no adults are allowed on the field. So, but we had student operators at that time. So, we were for the Handel show, we were back on the sideline and I was back running the console, which felt better to me because, ultimately I'm still responsible for it, but now I'm actually the one controlling it. So we definitely learned the importance of backups with that. And so we also, as you pointed out, we have a much better console that we can do some more things with. But probably one of the biggest things is with the way this worked now. So now the speakers and everything was back on the sideline. So it was impossible for the guitar player to hear himself play. So we were faced with several different problems. So one of the things that we needed to do for him to be able to hear himself is that we had to set up in-ear monitors. So we had a pack on the guitar player so that he could hear himself play. So we had to broadcast from the sideline, from the console, to him to be able to hear. and then we have much better wireless equipment than we had then. And so we were able to put 2 mic packs on him at all times, and the gear was comparing signals all the time as to which pack had better reception, and that was automatic. So our guitar player for that show had 3 packs on him, 2 broadcast packs and 1 receive pack, so that he could, do what he needed to do.
Which is amazing. I mean, even that is kind of like a fail-safe in itself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Whichever signal is stronger. And yeah, without the in-ear monitors, it wouldn't have been able to happen.
No,
right?
Absolutely not. Especially with the volume that the band generated, we couldn't have put enough speakers on the sideline for him to be able to hear himself in any meaningful way. So in-ear monitors is what we had to use.
And I could be wrong about this one, but didn't you kind of have to toy with a delay on him?
Yes, we have with the console that we have now, we're able to do some delay, and so one of the things that you have to look at, the sound when it travels over distances, depending on where your speakers are and where the person playing is, you can get some weird. You can get some weird looks with it, where it looks like it's out of sync. And so with the console that we have, we were able to put some delay in to make things align correctly so that the sound would line up with what is being seen out on the field.
Which, that's not something that your average person would think about, that you need to do that. But you're already ahead of the game, and you're making that adjustment to make it work. And, all marching band directors have heard their band probably play like phasing, like out of time from side A to side B.
Yes.
But dialing that in for a soloist is like a big deal. I'm thinking back to earlier this year, because you just have such a wide base of knowledge on sound equipment, and there was a performance you were unable to attend this year.
Yes.
And the sound, and the rest of us, like, we don't really understand this stuff, and there was like some feedback that like randomly started in that performance, and by a certain point we figured out. Now, if you were there, this would not have happened. But at a certain point, we figured out that the speakers were like far too close together or pointing at each other or something. And so we fixed it like probably within 15, 30 seconds, like not too long. I'm not saying this so you like feel bad about it. That's not the point. But just like the sheer knowledge that you have, you're talking about delay, right? And how that can fit to the soloist. And here we are, like the Joe Schmo band directors, hearing the boop, and we're like, what do we do here? It's just like such apples and oranges comparison to like your breadth of knowledge versus ours.
Well, I'm just gonna interject something there real quickly. So I, it is I think about the fact that we have people that have different skill sets and different experiences. And so I will use this example. A number of years ago, I was working in the Performing Arts Center. I believe it was ISMA time. Sure. And our top band at the time was on the stage playing. And I'm working on something else. But in the background, I'm listening. And I thought, man, they're really sounding great. And, I thought, wow, that is really impressive. And tune is over. And one of the conductors, I don't remember who it was sitting out in the house, and they're like, third trumpets, that's F sharp or whatever it was. And I'm like, how out of that do you hear, the third trumpet's playing the wrong note? I had no understanding of that. So, it was that made it very clear to me that different people have different skill sets, and it's wonderful that people are enjoying doing those things.
Yes, and that we've got all those people on our team.
Yes,
we have a very fortunate situation here at Concord for that. So leaving the marching band field,
yes,
and entering your tech booth,
yes,
in the BPAC. I can think of a couple things that are worth bringing up for that, but one, you have a pretty sweet setup in there.
Yeah, it is very nice.
It is really cool. And doing a walkthrough through there, I remember when that got built, I was like, that's a lot of TV screens. Wow, this is cool. A lot of buttons.
Yeah.
But that's kind of your home. Like, you spend a lot of time in that booth.
I do.
And you've got your crew of you got quite a few kids. They don't all work in the booth, but
correct.
There are some floaters in there.
Yep.
So you've, I don't know if you've ever tried to do the math on how many shows you've done at Concord, but you're definitely in triple digits, if not 4.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You've done a ton. And, you know, you've built that system of that control booth and in what it controls in the house, but also you built the kids, right? And you've kind of built your process for that. So can you kind of talk about like what that looked like when you took it over and how you built your tech crew in terms of people and personalities and like the culture of it, but also just the skills?
Yeah. So when I started, I actually, the year before I took over the facility, I came in, we had a substitute person. The person who was the full-time tech director left in the middle of the school year. And so they were kind of stuck. And so we had somebody else kind of minding the store that didn't necessarily have as much experience. So I was coming in on the side just to help out with the process. So the nice thing for me was I got to know the kids a little bit before, you know, I was in charge. Sure. And so that was helpful in that way. But basically one of the things that I really wanted to do is try to answer questions. I felt like as a student, when I was a student, sometimes I part of it was my own situation as a high school student. I don't think I necessarily asked the right questions all the time, but I also, you know, felt sometimes I didn't get my questions answered the way I wanted to. So I always really tried to work with the students to meet them where they are. If they are wanting more explanation or examples of how to do something, we do that. Some kids think that's what they want, but within 3 minutes you can tell that it's going right on through, or their eyes are glazing over, and so forth. And so I just really try to read what the students are ready for and try to help them, you know, fill in the blanks as far as they want to go. So basically, you know, as when we're running shows in there, it's myself and it's high school students. So anything that we can do to help them be better prepared to do jobs is a good thing. I'm a very firm believer in that high school students should be the ones running consoles and running things backstage when they're in high school. And so I really try to avoid having adults be involved if I possibly can. We've had several different times where we've been a little bit shorthanded for whatever the reason, and I've brought back some former students that were home on college break or in town and available, but that's not really what I like to do. I like to have the students be in charge. But one of the things that I really try to do is I try to make sure that I set up frameworks for them to keep them in a safe space where they're not the ones that have to figure it all out and make it work. So my goal is always to give them some leeway, but also make sure that they can't stray too far where they won't be successful. And one of the other things that I have to explain to them a little bit is like at the end of the day in the show, when something isn't working, the expectation is I'm going to step in and take care of it. So the way things are set up, the way things are routed, the way things are connected has to be in my logic, not, okay, you guys just figure it out and do something. Well, when push comes to shove and we're in the middle of the live performance and it's not working, I need to be able to say, okay, I know how this is supposed to be. So when I look at this, I can see, okay, this is why it's not working. And so it's kind of a twofold thing. It gives me a framework to be helpful in the event of a problem, but it also ensures that they are going to be successful if they kind of follow the framework.
It's always really impressive to watch the kids work too. You know, we're very lucky to have this like control booth, and the way it's set up, it's kind of got two tiers, right? It's got a lower tier where you actually control the house and control the stage, and the back tier is more for observing, right? And you can see the TV and stuff. So when we do a show, usually the back tier is kind of reserved for directors and like administration, right? That they can come in and view and watch. And then the front tier, bottom tier is where all the kids are and where Mr. Preheim is and they work. And it's just like so professional. And the way that you guys communicate with each other, there's clearly a system of how that works. You have your like walkie kind of situation on your headset, right? And you can all talk to each other and they're communicating backstage. And the kids are like efficient with their words. Mm-hmm. They're efficient with the commands. Things, from what we can tell, are smooth. You know, everything works out. And it's really fun to watch, especially because I have these kids in classes, right?
Yeah.
And so I get to see this like totally different side of them where they're like totally locked in on something that they have to be like hyper focused on, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
for some of these light cues, I mean, they happen within seconds of each other, right?
Yeah, depending on what the song is. If it's an up-tempo song and we want to have a lot of changes, we might have, 150 light cues in a 3-minute song. So, yeah.
And it's just fun to see like that different side of them, and just like it's impressive. And I don't mean to say that in like a condescending way, like, wow, that's impressive. But like, this is a side of these kids I didn't know existed,
Yeah.
And the kids that Mr. Preheim gets for that are like some of the smartest kids in the school. Like we have like a top 10 academic picture for every grade, like top 10 kids in each grade, and a lot of those kids end up in your crew, and there's some like attraction to it for them, and that you're providing for them, that you're getting like really like high level kids.
Yeah.
And it's kids that are involved in everything. There's a ton of music department kids, and that were, whether choir, band, or orchestra, there's like a lot of those guys. It makes sense because those are the ones that hear about it the most. But
Right.
then you've got some kids that have never, played a note or
Right.
sung a note,
Right.
and they're all successful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I've been very impressed over the years that really whoever comes to be part of the tech crew is welcomed in, and we have rarely had any issues with kind of, well, they're not a music student, or we don't know this kid, or whatever. I mean, for whatever the reason, it just works, and whoever shows up is welcome, and really have had very few problems with student interaction in the program.
No, that's great. And, thinking back, you've had some alumni of your program that are currently working in the field.
Yes.
Right. Obvious example is Austin Robbins, who was a former student here, was a drum major in the marching band and was in the top bands here, but also was in your tech club.
Yes.
And then came back to work here for a bit.
Came back to work here, yes.
But also at the Grand Ole Opry,
Yep,
right? And
yep.
is currently at Notre Dame.
Currently at
working
Notre Dame, yes.
for their-
Working on the athletic tech team, yes.
And some of the stuff he talks about that he does, video board, light board for the stadiums, whether that's
Yep.
hockey, football, basketball, I mean, stuff going on. But you've also had some other people that have locally been working in the field as
Yep,
well.
locally, I've have several other people that do a lot of work up, union-related work up in Chicago area, Michigan City area, and have lately been doing a lot of crew organizing for large events. They've also been doing some installation work of audio-video systems in conference centers, hotels, things like that.
And I imagine there are some kid. I can think of a kid that I would think is going to go on in your crew currently, but you probably got some kids right now in your crew that are thinking that might be their career
Yes,
path too.
I do. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that must be really cool to see as the leader of that group.
Yeah. It really is. It's really great to see students do some things with that, and just to hope that I was a little bit of a part of that, and was able to help them with that.
So, thinking about your culture of that group, like you've talked about very clearly, like you're taking volunteers only. Like
Yep.
you don't have to be here if you don't want to.
Right.
And it seems like the vibe of that whenever I walk in to the BPAC, if they're working, it's like they're getting stuff done, and they're typically having a pretty good time about it, and they enjoy kind of helping each other, because you kind of always have like a cast of new people and old people, right? It's kind of
People are always
whenever.
cycling in.
Yeah.
Today was a perfect example. I had 2 students who I'd not seen before that came with their friends. Usually we see that more in the beginning of the year, not so much by the end of the year. But so we'll find something for them to do and meet them where they are, and go from there. But yeah, we definitely have always got some things, people cycling through, and certainly find as students get older, juniors and seniors, they have other responsibilities, other things that they need to do, and so some of them will get jobs and are not as available anymore. But I just hope at that point I can get them to come back and help me with the shows.
Sure.
Maybe they're not there after school every day, but they can come and help with the shows. That's at that point I'm just happy if that's a possibility.
And are those guys working right now at Tech Club?
They just wrapped it up.
Okay, but
Yep.
they were working during this time.
Yeah, they worked there for about 30 minutes.
Well, perfect. I mean, that's a testament too to the culture of the group, that it can kind of run itself if you need to go away.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
one of my favorite stories that I tell the kids every time, because when we go onto the stage to rehearse for whatever concert, and it's usually more jazz band because concert band, they kind of sit in the stage and it's just like one thing, right? But you kind of give the jazz bands a little more spice when it comes to lighting and, and visuals. And they don't necessarily know that that's like not the norm, right? That that you're working hard to kind of create that experience for them. I mean, it's for the audience, but it's also for them.
Yeah.
And a story I like to tell them is when I think it was during 2020, I had to sit in with the jazz bands for Carnival due to COVID stuff. So I played guitar for something, and I don't know if you remember this, but I came down. I had like my janky guitar setup that I have had since high school, and I had like a really ratty cable that connected the pedal to the amp. And we rehearsed. We probably left for the night. We came back the next day. Suddenly, I had this beautiful, freshly wrapped cable going from the pedal to the amp, and I was like, that's definitely not mine. That was weird. And so I asked you about it, and you're like, yeah, you look like you need a new one, so I made you one. And I tell the kids this story every time we go onto the stage for something, because I'm just like, this is who Mr. Preheim is. Like, he just saw that was like not great. It was something that he could fix, and he took the time to fix it, and he didn't wait for anyone to ask. You know, he's just there to make the experience better, and that's what he does for you when he gives lighting. So I tell the kids like very clearly, like you are not the norm for most schools, and that they should find time to appreciate you for that and give you like a thanks or something or some, you know, acknowledgement that like you're making their experience better.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it too. I mean, that I still have that cable, and I took much better care of it now that you made it. So, you know, and then maybe the final thing we can talk about that is, in my mind, one of the most awe-inspiring things that you get to do or that you do at the school is Jazz Cafe.
Yes.
And you create it's for sure a team effort, but our gym looks like a nightclub.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a nightclub, like the sound quality is there. So can you give us listeners like what the gym looks like beforehand, what the 4 hours that you have to do to get it set up, and then what it looks like after for Jazz Cafe?
Yeah, so Jazz Cafe is an event that we do that we have the jazz bands down in the gym. We set up tables so that people can eat while they're listening to jazz music. And so it has just definitely been something that has evolved a lot over the years. And we have, tried to respond to what's needed to produce that event and work some things into our budget to help with that. So when we roll in with to start, the gym looks like any other high school gym. We have over the years added to our set. We have actually, I think one of the biggest transformations for the whole thing is we have some black cloth that I think was left over from a marching band show many years ago.
Shades of Life.
Shades of Life, yes. And so we can cover all the bleachers in the gym when they're folded up with the black cloth. So right away, that changes the tone immediately. We have some equipment that allows us to hang, or as we call it, fly. And so we're able to hang a black curtain behind the stage now. We have lights hanging out over the audience in the middle of the gym, so we can get the proper angle that we need to light the show. We actually hang the speakers from the ceiling so that we can get them at an appropriate level to cover the audience well. And so we have worked really hard to, 30 years now would be the 30th Jazz Cafe that I've done. I guess really not quite if you take a couple out for COVID, but done quite a few Jazz Cafes, and you just keep learning, okay, here are things that could make it better for us. And so we try to work that into the budget over the years and try to work some, put systems in place so that we can roll down on Thursday afternoon after school, get everything set up. Depending on what we're doing, if we're trying something new, we usually takes us a little longer than 4 hours. It's sometimes 6 or so that we're there. Oftentimes, though, we're just having fun listening to the sound system once we have it all set up. So it's one of the biggest systems that we work with for the year. So we have to play some tracks. And then we have during the day on Friday to kind of refine and so forth. But we have certainly in the last few years, we've come a long, long way with having systems in place to make it easier to set up and easier to tear down, so that it's not nearly as labor intensive as it had been. So in some ways that would save us a lot of time, but then we went ahead and added some more things.
Yeah.
So then we're kind of back to square one. But ultimately we have a great production value and
Yes.
still in a manageable amount of time.
And, it's too bad because everyone's thinking like jazz concert in a high school gym. Like that's the image in the listeners' minds right now, unless
Yeah,
they know.
right.
But you would not know you're in a gym unless you see out in the corner of the eye the 2 basketball hoops hanging up.
Yes.
But again, all blacked out, and then the insane amount of light, whether that's on the stage, whether that's like spotlights up on the ceiling, make
Yes,
it
yes.
give it the ambiance. But the production value with every student having a microphone, a completely mic'd drum set, mic'd amps, like 4 or 5 solo mics up front, this stage that gets built from scratch the night before. And those guys work like dogs and are at the school like what, until 10 or 11 that night.
Yeah, usually.
And then you're back at it at 7 a.m., 7:45 contract time.
Yeah.
But, you've got every jazz band in there during the school day and to do sound checks.
Yep.
And then it's another late night, the
Yep.
night
and,
of tear
and,
down.
And we hope we're out by midnight. That's the goal.
So you're pulling like 30 hours in 2 days. But it's, if you're a viewer going in for the first time, like I talk to the kids, like, think of the 8th grader that wants to be in high school band, that they're walking through those doors for the first time. They're like, this is awesome. Like I remember doing that as a kid. And that was something that made me want to do jazz band. And that's something that the kids remember, that, even for these kids that go on to perform after high school, like that's probably one of the coolest stages that they get to perform on ever. So the production value you're talking about for the kids, but also for the audience, and especially as a director there, I am like just every year like wowed by the production value, and that's one of the most magical nights of the year.
It really is. It really is. It's amazing. Kind of, we've talked about the tech crew and so forth. And if I talk to some of my students who have graduated, and we talk about times on the tech crew, almost 100% their favorite thing, Jazz Cafe.
Yes.
And what do? We work 30 hours in 2 days, but that's their favorite thing.
That's the favorite thing.
Yeah. It is amazing. That is, but it makes an impact, and it does. It's just a wonderful, magical time, and I enjoy it. Look forward to it every year.
Okay, maybe this is the final thing, Dad, but you have some really good stories that are pretty funny about random like fails that happened during a show, or just like random things. But I'm curious, is there a favorite one, of like a story of your time at Concord that you could share?
Oh boy, favorite fail?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm just thinking like, Snow Go is one of the, something along those lines, but just like some story that's like.
Well, so you mentioned snow. There are a couple relating to snow. We one time when we were doing not the matinee show, but I think it was dress rehearsal. We had not rehearsed how to make the snow go.
This is at our Christmas concert.
Christmas Spectacular. We have snow coming down, plastic flakes, and the student, I had this on my shoulders because I did not properly explain it. Student was not sure what to do, and they dumped the entire load of snow in one fell swoop, and you could actually hear it going through the air from the control room, and I knew we were in trouble. And so that kind of stopped rehearsal right there for quite a while till we were able to clean that up. So there was that. Then also one time in an actual show, I called for the snow to go, and on the locking rail where we control that, the line set that needed to move to make it snow was locked. There's locks on them. Somehow somebody had inadvertently locked it, and I'm the only one that had the key, and it's in the control room. So I am running down to the stage as fast as I can, and we have from the stage from the control room to the stage, we have a very steep set of stairs, and I think I went down about 4 steps at a time trying to get back there. And I did change the procedure. I do now have a key for the locking rail that the kids have access to, that they're supposed to have with them right there in the event that something has been locked that we needed to have not locked. So that, I mean, those are certainly two that I can think of right off the bat that it's just like, yeah, you can't believe it.
I was not present for the big snow dump, but I've also heard, again, and this is the rumor mill, but there was one tiny flake that got out before the dump.
That is fairly regular dealing with the snow because it's really hard to get that all to be where it should be, and it is plastic flakes, so you do have some static electricity that something will stick for a while and then suddenly it will decide not to, and so suddenly out of nowhere you get one little flake coming down. But yeah, we see that sometimes.
Wow, that is epic. I did think about that when I did see Frozen sing along this year at the Disney parks where they're doing the motorized like Dawn soap snow. That was kind of odd. It's like, I think Mr. Preheim does this one better. Disney, you didn't hear that. Please don't sue me. Well, Scott, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Oh, it's been a pleasure to be here.
Hearing you talk about your life, because you sit at the lunch table every day and you listen to our stories and gripes and talking about F concert tuning and A naturals being second valve instead of first, and it's good to hear your end a little bit more, and so we know. So thank you very much for coming on, Scott Preheim, Technical Director at Concord High School. So we do our little closing. So I'll say for Jack Hinkle, for Scott Preheim.
Okay.
Okay, for Jack Hinkle,
for Scott Preheim,
we're out of here.